Hello, Internet. This is a Longhorn Confidential for Tuesday, August 20th. I'm Danny Davis with the Austin American-Statesman. As always, Cedric Golden's here, Thomas Jones is here, and it's time to talk about football. Football season, we are officially 11 days away from the kickoff of the Texas football season with Colorado State coming in town next week. I know Ced wrote about the Rams today. We'll be talking more about the Rams next week. So today we're going to actually use this space to kind of do our preseason predictions and I guess get our let all y'all use our predictions to make some money or lose some money or whatever you want to do with these predictions. But
Do
um,
not do oh, hold on, Daniel. Hold on, Daniel. The views on this Longhorn Confidential podcast are not encouraged to be used for gambling purposes. Because I don't want anyone blowing up my email because they thought Texas was going to run the table and they didn't. So, yeah,
unless
gamble at your own risk, but don't use us as experts.
unless you win something, then break us off a subscription or something like that. Use
Okay.
that money to say thanks. But obviously, there's a lot of hype going into this season. We're all wordsmiths. We get paid to write. So we're going to ask everyone to get out their thesauruses. And what is one word you'd use to describe this build up to this 2024 season? Thomas, we'll start with you.
One word, it's kind of cliche, but expectation. I mean, it's been a while since Texas and their fans have entered a year with realistic hopes of winning a national championship. Really, I think it's been since the Mac Brown era, since the Colt McCoy era. So, it's boom or bust this year. It's a national title game or it's going to be a disappointment. And that's kind of a hard pill to swallow, but that's the barometer that Sark and his staff and the players have raised. So that's what it is, the highest of expectations.
Said, what word are you using?
Hyped. Everything is so hyped. They are really thinking big things over on the 40 acres. The fan base is engaged. I was at an event today at the Headliners Club, and there were 210 people in that building. And I did a show of hands. Who thinks they're going to run the table? And no one did that. No one raised their hand.
I'm surprised.
But a couple of people in the building were 11-1, raised their hands. But for the most part, there were some 10-2 people, lots of 10-2s, and several 9-3s. And so the hype is there, but it's tempered with realistic expectations. They are in the SEC now. They have to play the Georgia Bulldogs, who are the preseason #1 team in the major polls. They got to play Oklahoma again. They got to go to College Station. They got to go to Fayetteville. So there are some excited people about it, but they also know that there's a long road to hoe to get to special places in that CFP.
When I started doing this activity, I got out Google. I typed in,
No, Daniel,
I
don't work
typed,
so hard.
I typed in the word fun. I looked for some synonyms, and the word merrymaker that came up. That sounded fun.
Merrymaker.
There's this
It sounds
term
very
called
Mary Poppins, Daniel. That doesn't sound like football.
beer and Skittles, which was first apparently used by Charles Dickens back in the day. That was kind of fun. But I'm just going to use the word fun. This is fun. Like for the first time in a long time, probably if you're a Texas fan or someone on this beat, this is fun. This team is supposed to be fun to cover. They are going to be in a fun conference going to the SEC. That's going to be fun. The Michigan trip is going to be fun. That's a cool place to go visit if you're going on that trip. There's just a lot of fun things about this season, and I first got on this season on this beat when 2016. That was not fun. Losing to Kansas, watching Texas lose to Kansas was not fun. Watching Tom Herman, stumble out of the gate against Maryland was not fun those next couple seasons. Coming off that 2018 season when there was a lot of hype and watching them fall on their face, that was not fun. There's been parts of the Sark era, especially after that first year, that was not fun. But coming off the Sugar Bowl with the expanded playoff, with the new conference, with a good team, this is just fun. And if you're a Texas fan, I'd imagine you are excited, you are pumped up for that Colorado State game to get out there. And even though it's going to be 100 degrees outside, you're going to be out there tailgating and having fun and having the time of your life. And for us in the media, getting to do this and find different ways to cover this team, it's fun. So that's it's not the biggest word. It's only 3 letters, but I'm going to use that word to describe the build up to this season.
I like it.
I like beer and Skittles better, but okay.
Yeah. Well,
Hard to be merrymaker. Hard to be merrymaker.
Wait for later. Who was one Longhorn to look out for or keep an eye on this season? I'm going to eliminate Quinn. One Longhorn who is not Quinn.
Can't eliminate the Fansville guy.
So, well, we
He's
may
the
get
4 guy.
they get to him later. Who's one Longhorn to look out, keep an eye on in 2024? Thomas, we'll start with you again.
It's funny. Okay, we're shooting this on Tuesday, August 20th. So this morning I talked with cornerback Manny Muhammad, and I said, "What's one reason the pass defense will be better than last year?" So it wasn't great last year, and he mentioned first thing he mentioned was the defensive line, and specifically, I think that pass rush is going to be so big. That's why I'm pointing at Trey Moore. He's a difference maker. UT hasn't had an All-American on the edge since Brian Arakpo, what, in 08 said, 09?
Wait.
And I think Trey Moore is that level of pass rusher. It's something UT hasn't had in 15 years. I think he's the biggest difference maker this year.
Said.
I love that pick. I love that pick. I was gonna go with Ethan Burke because I think he's gonna be a great number 3 rusher, but with Moore and Barron Sorrell. But I'm gonna look over on the offensive side and point to the best player on the team. Kelvin Banks is the best football player on this team. He's the best at his position in all of college football. ESPN had their top 100 players. He's number 8. He's number 8. And you're talking about draft picks. You got skill positions are dominating. Kelvin Banks will be a top 10 pick. He's the most important guy on this team because he's protecting Quinn Ewers' backside. And Quinn Ewers got to stay clean. We know there's hype around Arch Manning, but Arch Manning is inexperienced, and you want your third-year starter to be clean. And Kelvin Banks is going to be the most important part of this team because I believe he's got the most important job. And so I think he will be the difference maker on this squad because if they can limit the opposition to 25 or fewer sacks, it's pretty good in the SEC. If you allow less than 25, you're doing pretty good.
I think if you look at the skill positions on offense, there's about 6 or 7 wide receivers to pick from. I don't think you can go wrong with anyone in that group, but I'm going to go with Jaydon Blue. I think the running game, obviously, right now, there's a lot of question marks around it. There were going to be a lot of question marks before CJ Baxter got hurt, but now that he's injured, Jaydon's kind of the 1A option, maybe just the overall number 1 option with Trey Wisner and Jarrett Gibson kind of trying to find their roles. And we saw a little bit at the end of the last season from Jaydon, but now what's that going to look like in a bigger role, what we presume is going to be a bigger role. And so I think how he performs or how either Trey or Jarrett perform, I think that's going to have a big say. And because no matter what we think of Quinn or what we think of Steve and his ability to dial up pass plays, Steve prefers a balanced attack, and they have to be somewhat balanced in order to make this offense work, and that requires a running game. So it's going to be interesting to see which one of those running backs steps up. I think Jaydon gets the first shot at it, so he's going to be my player to look out for going into this season. Colorado State, that's the first game. Michigan, that's the second game. I'm not going to let Michigan be an answer or Georgia in October be an answer, but exclude those 2 games. What is the toughest game on Texas's schedule? Seth, we'll start with you.
I think the toughest game is going to be November 30th in College Station, if we're not talking about those other 2. The Aggies been waiting for this. The one thing the Aggies could always tell recruits since 2012 is we're the only school in Texas that's playing in the SEC. We're playing Alabama. We're playing LSU. We're playing Georgia. We're playing Florida. Now, all of a sudden, they're back in the shadow of Big Brother. And Big Brother is getting all the hype in the preseason. Big Brother is number 4 in the preseason ranking. Big Brother is coming off a CFP finish, semifinals. So I think that the Aggies are lying in wait to ambush the Longhorns. We don't know what either team's going to look like by Thanksgiving weekend. Injuries happen, guys. Attrition happens. So we don't know how either one of these teams will look. Now, my guess is Texas will be in position for a CFP berth going into that game, and A&M will not be. I do not think A&M is going to win more than 8 games this year. I think they have a 7-5 look to them, even though their toughest games are at the house. So I think will be looking at that game to be a spoiler. And if they can hand Texas that third loss, that might knock Texas out of the CFP and throw all of college football on its ear. I still believe that's going to be the most watched non-playoff game of the season, because it's going to be on Saturday after Thanksgiving. There aren't many games that day. I think the whole country's going to be watching, and I think the Aggies are going to be poised to pull that upset.
TJ?
Okay, I can't go Michigan. I can't go Georgia. I'm not going to go A&M. Look, there's a lot of new things going on. There's the first ever trip to Michigan, the SEC, Georgia, renewing A&M. Let's go back to OU, man. Let's go back to the Cotton Bowl,
I'm
the
mad at
Crimson
you.
and
I'm mad
Cream.
at you.
It can be a house of horrors for Texas football. Texas had the better team last year and they lost. They have the better team this year, but it wouldn't surprise me if they lose again in Dallas just because of what that stadium can do to Texas in recent history. They should beat OU, but man, it is tough to get out of that stadium alive, man. It's tough. And I'm
Don't you
not
just
just
love it?
talking about
Don't you
being a
just love it
fan.
though? Isn't it great? Isn't that
I love
great?
it. Best atmosphere in college football.
It's the best.
It is without a doubt the second best rivalry in college football behind Montana State. But
You don't get that homer crap off this podcast, Daniel Davis.
sorry, I'm still
I'm
allowed
gonna
to
tell
speak.
Chastity to
Do
not cook
something
your
here.
dirt.
What do you call it? The Brawl in the Hall or something? What is it?
Brawl of the Wild.
Brawl of the Wild. Oh, that's good.
The
That's
big
good.
lie in the big sky.
We'll go to Missoula one of these times for one of these games. But my pick is actually, I don't think Texas is going to get caught slipping in either A&M or OU. They're obviously, the Michigan and Georgia games are marquee games, and I'm sure everyone's already pumped up for. That Arkansas game could not be a bigger definition of a trap game. Arkansas is not going to be good, but they have to go to Fayetteville. And Arkansas was not good 3 years ago, and Texas had to go to Fayetteville, and they got their butts kicked.
Oh,
And
that's
that game is Arkansas's Super Bowl. They're probably already lining up outside that stadium, already tailgating, even though that game's not until November. And even though it's an 11 o'clock in the morning game, those fans are going to be ready. They're going to be pumped up, juiced up, however you want to describe them. That is a crazy
Juiced is the
place
right
to
word.
crazy place to go play, as anyone who went to that game 3 years ago, which was still COVID times when we were supposed to be having some kind of precautions. And that place was packed and ready to burn to the ground after, the Razorbacks won. So I think if Texas is looking ahead towards A&M or riding high after a series of games that included the Georgia and Oklahoma games in October, I think Arkansas could slip in there and get that one big win on their resume. So that'd be the one game I'd be concerned about if I was a Texas fan, even though they may face 11 better teams this season. That Arkansas game, I think, is definitely the definition of a trap game. Pick UT's record. I'm going to take this safe route, say 10-2. I think they lose one of the rivalry games, whether pick Oklahoma or A&M, and then I say they lose to Georgia too, but that's still good enough to get into the playoff and maybe get into the SEC championship game. But I'm going to go 10-2. Thomas?
I'm going 11-1 with Georgia beating Texas in Austin. But I'll tell you what, I think the Longhorns are closer to 12-0 than 10-2. I think their chance of beating Georgia is greater than stumbling against A&M or OU.
It's great. 10-2. 10-2. I like them at home against Georgia, but it won't shock me if they lose. That Georgia-Oklahoma double, man, that is just brutal. That is a brutal double. So that's a gauntlet. And like Daniel said, Arkansas won't be a picnic. I mean, they're gonna go balls to the wall in that game at the house. So I think I don't worry about Texas in the big games, particularly Quinn. He shows up for those. I do worry about him in games like Vanderbilt, Arkansas, those kind of games,
Kentucky, keep an eye on Kentucky,
Kentucky,
overlooked team.
Florida, those kind of games, man, where it's not as much hype. Because remember last year, Wyoming, TCU, Houston, they play great in those games. So, 10-2 sounds right to me. Pretty safe. Get them into the CFP. Um, hopefully, if there's 10-2, probably won't be top four. I don't think. They may end up playing that first weekend of the CFP, which will take away some vacation time from your boy. But that's a personal problem. But getting into the CFP, that's the goal, man. And once you're in the tournament, I don't like the first round bye at all. I'd rather it be 8 teams and everybody play everybody. Because that bye week, that late in the season, is so advantageous to the big dogs. Very advantageous. They get to rest up. But 10-2 sounds about right to me, Daniel.
Right, so we all have, them making the playoffs with either at 10-2 or 11-1. So that's not that bold of a prediction. I think that's probably universal across the board. But what is one bold prediction that you have said will let you step up to the plate first?
A CFP prediction?
There's one bold prediction for Texas for this
Oh,
season.
bold, BOLD. They're going to have two guys finish with 10 sacks each minimum. That's
When's the
a
last time
big
they had
deal.
one?
That's bold. They haven't had one finish with 10 since 2013, and that was Jackson Jeffcoat, son of the Cowboys, great Jim Jeffcoat. That same year, their defensive end, Cedric Reed, had 10. So the last time they had double-digit sack man, they had 2. So I think Trey Moore is going to finish with double-digit sacks, and either Baron Sorrell, who I run hot and cold on Baron Sorrell, but boy, he looks good in the preseason. He's a grown man. He looks like he's ready to do something. Baron Sorrell or Ethan Burke, I think one of those guys is going to finish with 10 as well. So Texas had 39 last year. I think they're going to end up with like 45, 46 sacks, which is going to be music to Sark's ears because there are question marks in the middle of that line. A disruptive edge rusher or two can solve many an ill in the SEC.
Thomas, I need you to get bold for me. What's your bold prediction?
I got one crazy prediction, as our friend Houston Connors, Kirk Bowles would say.
Who?
Exactly. Uh Man, it's tough, but Jaydon Blue, he was a good change of pace running back last year. We know what happened to CJ Baxter. I think freshman Jared Gibson leads the team in rushing this year.
Wow.
Prediction. I think he's going to
That's
be.
not bold. That's crazy.
I think he's going to be a workhorse between the tackles. I think he'll get more carries than Jaydon Blue. He'll be pretty effective. I think Blue will still be dynamic, explosive, but he won't get as many carries as Jarek, who's very physical back, and he's going to get a lot. He's going to carry the rock.
What about Quinn Travian Wisner?
Ain't change of pace, third down guy.
I love that. I love that, TJ. I don't know that Texas loves it, but I love it. I love it.
I'm going, speaking of our old friend Kirk Bowles, I'm saying Kirk votes for Quinn for the Heisman this year. Quinn wins the Heisman. I think he has the third best odds going into the season. I don't think he has to necessarily have like a Jaden Daniels stat line or a Joe Burrow stat line from a few years ago, but I think if he does what we expect him to do and leads Texas to a 10-win, 11-win season, maybe getting that SEC championship game, I think that will be enough of a narrative, especially with Texas kind of riding this high, to get him the votes and get him, he'll have the momentum going into New York. And I think he gives Texas its first Heisman Trophy winner since Ricky and whenever that was 98. Whenever
98. Let me ask you something, Daniel. Let me ask you something since you opened that door. What's his stat line? if he's going to win a Heisman Trophy, how many touchdowns is Quinn going to throw?
Like I said, I don't think it necessarily needs to be like something absurd, like 5,000 passing yards and 40 touchdowns. I just think if he has steady, ranks among the, top 2 or 3 in the SEC in passing and leads them to that 10, 11 win plateau, I think Texas is going to have enough momentum just because of everything that they're going into this season competing in the SEC. I think that's a
How
good
many
player.
touchdown passes?
I'm not,
He had 22 last year. How many?
well, obviously
You're
needs
not going
more
to
than
win a
20.
Heisman with 22 this year.
Probably needs to get into the 30s and obviously
Yeah,
more than like,
bring it, bring it.
with
35.
3, 4,000 yards. But if the running game is hampered like we think it's going to be, with a true freshman as TJ thinks in the field rushing, Quinn's going to have to shoulder a load, and so there's going to be an opportunity for him. And obviously, he's had a huge offseason with all the NIL deals and all the attention that he's getting. But I think he probably is going this season with something to prove both to the NFL scouts and the people at home who think number 16 should be starting instead of him. So I think he's going to have a lot to prove this year, and I think he's going to get it done and get that invite to New York and bring home that Heisman Trophy. So that's my bold prediction. But
Bold. That's pretty bold.
You're trying to make that trip to New York City happen for you, aren't you?
Get the tux ready, Daniel. Get the tux
Too.
ready.
I went a few years ago when Baker won his Heisman. That was a fun trip. So I'm sure the wife would love to accompany me this year because she had to stay home with the McCallum cheer team when Baker won in 17.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, those are our bold predictions. All of our predictions, like Cedric advised, don't necessarily take these to the bank or your local bookie. Probably not the wisest idea, but that's gonna do it for us
Who
for
has
this.
who has a local bookie anymore?
I don't know. I'm not in that world. I'm sure there's someone out there running amok in Austin, but
Scary.
uh,
That's scary.
that's gonna do it for us here on the Longhorn Confidential. Thanks for listening to us wherever you get your podcast or watching us on YouTube or station.com, where you will also find plenty of content. It's the preseason, both this week and next week as we start getting ready for Colorado State and the opener of the 2024 Texas football season. Said, I think you have a Kelvin Banks column coming. Anything else down the pike?
I got some pass rush love coming in the next couple of days, and then we'll have a Kelvin Banks reader on Sunday. So be looking for that.
I got a Silas Bolden story on why he's kind of been the talk of the camp. That should be coming out pretty soon.
Well, there you go. And I need to actually look at what I'm supposed to be writing, but I have stuff coming up too. And on Second Thought podcast will be coming back sooner rather than later as well. So keep an eye out for that as well. But yeah, we appreciate you all tuning in, and we'll see y'all down the road. Deuces.